Building Disaster Resilience in Your Own Backyard, part of the Green Building series. Today we're going to look at the role of local government in building resilience, hazards and risks in Area F, Errington, Coombs and Hilliers, how to build disaster resilience, how to shelter in place, a look at getting back to basics, and neighborhood emergency preparedness. So what is the RDN responsible for? As you can see from the diagram, emergency management is an ongoing cycle. In the area of preparedness, the RDN emergency program has an active outreach component. Neighborhood emergency preparedness and general emergency preparedness presentations are available upon request. We participate in the Great BC Shakeout Earthquake Drill, Emergency Preparedness Week, and more. For response, the RDN deals annually with seasonal, localized flooding and minor landslide events. Staff take emergency management training so that we can be operationally ready to respond at all times. For recovery, we have Emergency Social Services volunteers. They provide 72 hours of immediate relief following an emergency or disaster. We have relationships with the Canadian Red Cross, who can help provide long-term recovery after 72 hours. The RDN is also a founding member of the Regional Community Recovery Working Group, focused on the transition from local government recovery to longer-term community recovery. Check out information on the Emergency Management of BC's website about disaster financial assistance. It is available in some circumstances following an emergency. There are 7 classifications. For mitigation, we have a Fire Smart program. We look at vegetation management using fire-resistant building materials. We like to communicate with the public about the steps that they can take to mitigate the risk right on their own property. Emergency management objectives. As mandated by the Emergency Program Act, these are local government's top priorities in order. These are immediate goals during the response and initial recovery phases. They also guide strategic, longer-term goals that can be achieved by building self-sufficiency. What are your local hazards? What do you think the biggest risks are? Have you experienced an earthquake? A tsunami? A hazardous materials accident? How much risk do you think there is? This is the Regional District of Nanaimo's Hazard Vulnerability Risk Analysis. It's on the district's website. It breaks down hazards, their associated risks, frequency, and social, economic, and political impacts. It details identified hazards, response capacity, and more. You can find information specifically related to where you live in the electoral areas. Wildland urban interface fire is the biggest risk in the region. And in Errington, the risk runs from high to extreme. The top left picture indicates an extreme fire risk, common in the summer. When you combine that with the high risk of interface fire, it's a very real concern. The bottom left picture looks west from the vantage point at Little Mountain. It gives a view of Errington's high fuel density. Errington was the first fire service area to work with the RDN to access provincial funding to create a community wildfire protection plan. The plan identified high hazard areas and outlined Fire Smart recommendations to reduce risk. Check out the Errington Community Wildfire Protection Plan on the district's website. The Coombs Hilliers plan will be posted soon. Knowing about this hazard in advance, we can choose where and how we build to mitigate our risk. Our analysis shows us that pandemic and epidemic is our next most serious threat. We have the Culex pipiens species of mosquito here that are competent carriers of the West Nile virus. No confirmed cases have been reported thus far in the island, but there have been a few equine deaths. Check out the BC Centre for Disease Control's website for more information. There have been some human deaths in Oregon and Washington and in Alberta. Equine deaths are more common from West Nile virus. Do you remember the 2009 H1N1 rush on vaccinations? The real problem is not from people dying. A small percentage of people die every year. It's the impact on healthcare, first responders, parents, schools, daycares, workplaces, essential services, and more. Hospitals especially had to rethink their surge capacity and available resources. Earthquakes. The Cascadia subduction zone is located approximately 100 kilometers west of Vancouver Island. The last subduction 9.0 magnitude earthquake was in January 1700, 303 years ago. The date has been pinpointed by using tree rings and First Nations oral history. The earthquake caused the ground along the coast to drop 5 feet, lowering coastal forests into the salt water. Historical records in Japan describe waves 30 feet high hitting the coast on the 27th to 28th of January, 1700. Being an island, along with earthquake risks, comes a concern for tsunami. As you can see from the map, where we live is actually at very low risk. Our main issues will be infrastructure damage. Damage to distribution systems and transportation corridors could be impacted and limit first responders. This is why it's critical to be able to survive on your own for at least 1 week, for up to 1 month. Knowing what our earthquake hazard is in advance, we can choose now to prepare ourselves. Climate change and disaster resilience. We have to plan now for known increasing risk in the future. How will this impact us here as a coastal community? Climate change brings sea level rise, more extreme weather, and extended wildfire seasons. If a major disaster happened right now, how would your family fare? Are you well prepared and have a family emergency plan? How will you reunite if you're separated and can't get home due to an emergency or disaster? Do you have emergency supplies at home? How will you communicate? Do you have a grab-and-go bag? Disasters do happen. It's just a matter of when. And when they do, there's no next time, no second chance, and no timeout. When disaster strikes, it can happen quickly and without warning. It can force you to leave your neighborhood or confine you to your home. Local government and relief workers will be on the scene as soon as possible after disaster, but we can't reach everyone right away. I'm sure we've all heard a few of these, some common myths about disasters and preparedness. Never happened to me. I'm all insured, so I'm okay. I'm sure we'd all cope. You can't plan for the unforeseen. If I don't have a disaster, I've wasted my money. The government will take care of me right away. Let's hope not. And now for the good news. Choose not to be a disaster victim. Be proactive. Be empowered. Be prepared. What you do now will determine what life will be like after a large emergency or disaster. What is disaster resilience? It's the ability to adapt and change in ways that are proactive, that build local capacity, and that ensure essential needs are met. All the comforts of home. What do we use our home for? Basic shelter, warmth, cooking, sleeping, hygiene. We tend to take these amenities for granted. In 2007, due to a major storm, the power was out in many areas for 7 to 11 days. How did you manage? Were you able to meet your basic needs on your own? Do you know anyone who was not able to cope? Why was that? Back to basics. How to be self-sufficient-ish. Happiness belongs to the self-sufficient. Aristotle, old wisdom that still rings true. Moving beyond tin food and the 72-hour myth. This will keep you full for a while. But what about when your 3-day supply runs out? Food security is an issue when you live on an island. Studies have been conducted that show we have 3 days of food on grocery store shelves before a resupply. What if the roads and bridges were damaged and you couldn't drive to the store? The shelves would quickly empty. Backyard farming, moving towards sustainability on an acre or less. It's not what you may typically think of as disaster planning, but having food available close at hand helps you to shelter in place effectively during an extended emergency. How big a backyard do you need to live off the land? On a quarter-acre lot, depending on your layout, you could produce a lot of food. In addition to saving money, if you had to shelter in place, you would be well positioned. On a 1-acre lot, you could divide your land into raising livestock, a garden for raising fruits, vegetables, and forage crops. Raising 3 pigs a year can feed a family of 4, twice per week, for a year. 1 year of meat requires 207 square feet at minimum. In addition to being self-sustaining during a disaster, you get to eat healthy food. The best staple crops for building food self-sufficiency should be easy to harvest and store, return good yields, and be calorie dense. Grow foods that don't require fossil fuels to store them. Continuous growing. 12 garden beds measuring 4 feet by 8 feet each can produce more than 2,000 pounds of vegetables per year when planned carefully. To ensure an abundance of vegetables, grow multiple crops in the same area at different times. Crops such as spinach, peas, broccoli, and beets can be planted and harvested in the spring, leaving the garden beds ready for planting of summer crops such as tomatoes, zucchini, peppers, and corn. Once these are harvested, the cool season crops can be planted again and grow into the fall. Preserving the harvest. Did you grow up eating food that your family had preserved? Did you eat smoked meat or fish? Did you dry your own fruit? Our mothers, grandmothers, and elders did this as a matter of course. We could learn much from them, and it's much tastier. Storing the harvest. You've planted, faithfully tended your garden, harvested, and now it's time to store your bounty. It can be very simple. Just know how to store different groups of vegetables. Storing food is as simple as you choose to make it. There's many types of root cellars. The garden row storage, for example, cover a row of carrots with hardware cloth, add 8 inches or more of mulch, and it's that simple. A hay bale fortress can extend the life of lettuce, escarole, tomatoes, broccoli, and chard. A plant protection tent, simply a plastic sheet over a row, anchored with rocks. Mounds or clamps, above ground mound of vegetables covered with earth and insulation. Trenches, a buried barrel, drain tile, covered metal can. A root cellar box. Earth pits. There are many books and articles available online, many with very easy to follow directions and diagrams. You have your root cellar, now it's time to store your harvest. Date all your perishables. Flour and nuts go rancid. Keep them very cool and use them fast. Watch for mice and insect damage. Have a method for rotation and set up a reminder system to do it routinely. It's really easy to do it when you change your smoke alarms. Save some seeds for sprouting. It provides fresh nutrients along with preserved foods. The basic rules of food storage. Use it or lose it. How to be more sustainable in your home. Let's look at secondary energy and heating sources. Here's the RDN Sustainability Coordinator to tell you more.
So we have rebates for efficient wood stoves and fireplaces, and we also have rebates for solar hot water system and solar photovoltaic, which is the system that generates electricity, and also for geo-exchange, either ground source or water source system. And those are good supplementary systems to the primary energy and heating systems that you already have.
The ability to shelter in place doesn't just apply to food and your immediate needs. You can design ways for your home to have more resilient systems. Think about your potable water needs, water for hygiene, livestock and pets, storing water for emergencies. You need at least 2 liters per person per day. For a family of 4, that's 240 liters for 1 month. How will you store it and where? Check out our Water Smart program. They have great information and presentations. You can find them on our website. Doing your part. There's lots of useful information on the RDN's website. You can book a presentation about assembling an emergency kit or personal preparedness plans for your organization or group. You can email beready@rdn.bc.ca today. Neighborhood emergency preparedness. Experience has shown us that after disaster, it may take time for first responders to reach many individuals and neighborhoods. In areas that are isolated or have limited access, it may take even longer. Plan to be self-sufficient for a minimum of 1 week for up to 1 month. People who have experienced disasters have witnessed the way in which neighbors naturally come together to help one another. Being prepared means increased confidence, have a plan, be prepared and self-sufficient. Book your free workshop with Fiona McInnes at beready@rdn.bc.ca. One-stop information shopping. Go to our website at rdn.bc.ca and click on Get Involved. Each tile shows different ways to build resilience through information, workshops, rebates, and more. Check it out and get involved. Have any questions? Want more information? Here's how you can get in touch with us. And remember, together we can work towards building a resilient future. Be proactive, be safe, be ready.